Hi, and welcome to Practical Ideas for Growth. I'm so excited to be here today with Michelle. We are going to be talking about pricing structure and approach at CPA firms and the many strategies that continue to evolve in our profession. Um, but it's obviously one of the most important because it's how we get paid for our services. And we have an expert for sure on the phone today, or on the phone, on the video with us today to be able to talk about this. Michelle is very well known for this in the profession. And especially seeing all the staffing shortages and the adoption of technology advancing, there's a lot of conversations today around changes here, which is really exciting. I think because this profession has been long overdue for pricing changes. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here with you, Sarah. Long time.
Awesome.
We've known each other and too long since we've talked.
I know, absolutely. I wish it was in person and I was giving you a hug and
Yes.
but we will get there. We will get back to that one day. So
One of these days.
maybe a start, just tell everybody a little bit about your company and what you do. I know a lot of people know who you are, but just for those folks that this may be the first time that they're listening to you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So I kind of morph over my career. I've morphed a fair bit. I have an accounting background. I have a marketing background. I've been a marketing director in a CPA firm and a law firm, and hung out my shingle to be an outsourced marketing department, similar to your company, Sarah, for many years. And just always kind of one of the things that we all specialize. You have some key specialties, even though we're jacks of all trades in the marketing arena. One of my specialties has always been positioning and pricing, and positioning effectively is to help people see our true worth when our firms go to market. So, and pricing being one of the 4 P's of marketing is just such a natural fit with effective positioning, that's an area that I've always enjoyed. And I've just taken that and kind of shed almost everything else that I've done in my practice over the years. I still do some strategic planning and stuff, but by and large, most of what I do is related to helping firms shift their pricing approach and just get better at being able to articulate what their services are worth rather than focusing on the time they spend providing them.
I love it. It's so important. I feel like we put so much of our worth in our price, and it's such an area that I see firms struggle with. So I love it. One of the things that I think we've seen, and maybe you've seen something different, but I feel like with the staffing shortages, I've had more conversations in the last 2 years around the impacts that the solutions to those staffing shortages are outsourcing
Yeah.
technology are having, and it's reflecting back on pricing and how do we do that. And I'm seeing more and more firms actually open to the conversation of not just billing by the hour. What are you seeing there, or what are you seeing going on in that space?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that firms are definitely, well, we know firms are feeling the pinch of having fewer people, and since they're exceeding their capacity, they have more clients than they know they can serve properly. I think, on one hand, they're talking about ways to shed some of that client base that doesn't suit them for their long-term strategies and goals, but they're also being bolder about pricing, and it's kind of giving people a sense of, hey, if we price a little bit more aggressively, which they have to, salaries are going way up. The competition for team members is so high. Firms are finding that they're bringing in, mid levels at high level people prices, which of course causes the ripple effect of having to elevate salaries elsewhere in the firm, et cetera, et cetera. So they're realizing, you know, uh, they have to alter their pricing. And I think they feel bad about it because they know that their clients are struggling economically, especially businesses that barely kept their doors open during COVID. And their accountants are kind-hearted people, and they don't want to elevate their prices unfairly or whatever. They're going to be the last ones to raise prices from anybody else out there because they have huge hearts, and they don't want to be how do I say, they don't want to be a liability for their companies. They just don't want to be the most expensive thing people buy, but they also undervalue themselves. And kind of referring back to COVID and staffing, I think that firms did something really cool. A lot of firms that were helping businesses with PPP work and even just keeping their doors open. So business advisory services on a business preservation counselor level, I think that they fixed price that a lot. And the firms I talked to, they started out pricing a few hourly or charging hourly. Hourly is not really a price. And then they realized, you know what, let's just set a fixed price for it and roll that out. And they got really, I think clients they saw how much clients like knowing their price up front. And they also felt the wonderful aspect of the simplicity of it, of just saying, here's the price, and then making the work fit the price as need be. So I think it was a neat opportunity for exploration. But going forward, firms are realizing two things. They have to raise prices to be able to afford people, technology, funding their own retirements, the leaders of the firms funding retirements. But they also, if they're developing business advisory services or offering business advisory services, they know that those are worth more than, whatever their standard billing rate is. So they know that they want to look at alternative ways to price.
Yeah, yes, I have a conversation daily on that. And especially this time of year, just being able to have that conversation around salary raises. And they are the nicest people in the world. And I tell them that daily. I said, you are so nice. And it is sometimes a liability for the firms. And I love the way that you describe that, because that's not what they want to be. But yet do you really want to take a haircut because it's costing you more for your talent, and you can't ask your client for more money, when the reality is it is. And unfortunately, I think the profession has shot themselves in the foot a little bit over the decades and centuries because of that. And now I think there's a lot of course correcting, not just what's going on in our current environment, but compliance services has taken that for a long time, right?
Yes.
And unfortunately, we created that. So my hope is that we'll be in a little bit of a reversal to correct some of that perception in the marketplace around that.
I hope so. There's two things, Sarah, that I usually will share with a partner group that kind of creates aha moments about that we have to do something. One is a reminder that if your firm is writing off 20% on average across our profession, their realization's at 80%, so they're writing off 20%. They're writing off Friday. They
Yeah.
are. They're writing off a day a week, and that's pretty substantial. And when you tell people that with better scoping, they can eliminate that, they can reduce that, because they can stop doing work that they can find out in advance they're not going to be paid for, or they can better manage the client's expectations and better manage the scope of the engagement. There's things they can do, and I'm confident that it's pretty easy to cut that at least in half, if not eliminate it. None of us wants to do work we're not going to get paid for. And this whole hourly thing where the client doesn't know the price until you're done with the work, it's a terrible client experience. No one likes it. The next gen coming in, Gen X, Gen Y leaders, which during COVID, so many extra boomers left early because of, kind of exhaustion of trying to keep their business thriving and hand it over the business or whatever to that younger leader. That younger leader does not like to buy the way that their predecessor did. They're not that comfortable with the blank check approach. They're just like, if you can't tell me how much something is going to cost me if I work with you, then who can? Why can't you tell me? And they want to know their budget in advance. So that whole buyer with the blank check thing is not flying with next gen. They want certainty in price. So the hours game has taught us a bad habit. And the bad habit is that we embark on work as accountants. We embark on work without a plan. And that it is detrimental, because it hasn't made us learn how to scope well. It hasn't made us learn how to project plan. It certainly hasn't helped us project manage well. And the way we fielded it is by writing off work that we did that we kind of in retrospect wish we hadn't. And there's so many ways around that.
Tell me about some of those ways, right, Michelle? Like how can we start to address that?
Yeah. Well, scoping skills is obviously it starts with project definition and project management, but I think that is pretty key. The other is communicating up front what is and isn't included. So another technique that's very successful is to give a client options. And when you take the time to think through this option versus this option, and there's magic to three, so a third option, when you take the time, and it does take more time than just saying, I'm going to charge you X dollars times rate. When you take the time to lay out your options, you've gone through a process of project planning. And by definition of that project, now the client can see exactly what's included and what's not included at their level, but also your team members can see it. So now your team members are likelier to understand when to stop working because the client has only bought the low option or the middle option and not the highest option. And the client can be reminded easily because it's in writing. You can say, oh, I'm happy to help you with that, but you do realize that was in the option you didn't buy. Would you like to upgrade? And now you have so much better CYA. Honestly, a lot of that 20% that we write off as a profession is because we haven't defined the work. And when we tell somebody, I'll handle your taxes or I'll handle your financial statements, if we don't go into some detail about what is and is not included, the client automatically, as any of us would, assumes everything is in there. You'll come to my house, you'll pick up my papers, it's all in there, and it's not. But we know that in our heart, and the client doesn't know it because we've never told them. And that causes us guilt when we sit down and look at WIP and we realize we did more than the client might be happy with. And then we realize, well, we never really told them what is or isn't included. So we feel guilty billing it and we write it off.
Yeah. Gosh, project management, something that is needed to happen. It happens in audit because it's forced to happen in audit. But on the tax side of the business, an area where a lot of firms could use a lot of help. And firms have made some good headway. I will give credit because it is just not something that is a term that is thrown around, right?
Yep.
A lot of project management software until workflow came about was
that helps.
Closest thing. It's still not quite project management. There's still a skill set there that's needed to be able to anticipate out and plan all of that. But yes, and it is, you're right. I never thought about the project management side, but when we do that scoping too, we have to literally think about the whole time what is involved. And it's an overwhelming feeling. I just got off a call right before this where it's exactly what we were talking about. And we narrowed it into like one small segment, like work on these things and anticipate these things. And, here's what to think about for some of these. And the thing is, they always think they don't know it, but when they actually get into it, they do, because they do the work.
They do.
Never sat down to think about it. Or they think that they can't control and they can't tell the client, here are the standards. Here's how you need to send us those invoices. Here's how we're going to communicate with you, right? And there's places to be flexible, and there's places to, encourage, some standardization so that we're not doing it 100 different ways for every single client that we have, because we can never be successful doing it that way.
100% agree. 100%. And it is when they actually sit down and start to define it, they realize, oh yeah, I kind of do know what's included and what's not included. I always use the simple tax return approach. I say, okay, if you would be likely to, just off the top of your head, tell me or Sarah that it's going to be 3,000 to 5,000, rough range. Okay, that's fine. Ranges are dangerous unless you go into definition. So I say, okay, tell me what has to be absolutely perfect for it to just be $3,000. And now what goes awry that everyone knows is going to happen 90% of the time to make it 5. Well, now if you actually put that in writing, maybe a 4 in the middle, what has to be perfect to keep it at 3, what could go awry to make it 5, the difference. You just never wrote it down before. And once you write it down and we can walk through it in 2 seconds, it's like, oh yeah, I could tell a client that. And most clients will look at the 3,000 option like I would and say, oh, if I have to have my stuff to you early, that's not going to happen. Put me in the 4,000 or 5,000.
Right.
I've just moved myself up, and now I'm not mad at you because when you told me 3 to 5, I heard 3 and you knew 5.
Well, what I love, right, over the years, I love it when I get to a place with a client, or when I watch our firms get to a place with a client, when they call and they go, I need your help with something and I don't think it's in scope, or I'm not sure if it's in scope, because now they know to ask, right? And they don't just assume that everything that you do comes for free or everything that's included. And I think that that's important for them to have that responsibility and understanding in that relationship as well.
We
Uh,
have to teach that. Like
mhm,
we train our clients when we feel abused, it's because we've trained our clients to abuse us.
yes, and it's hard to get out of reframing that. It takes some bold moves in some cases, but yes, absolutely. You meant we talked a little bit, right, Michelle, about like not knowing how to scope, and that's always a challenge. But what are some of the other challenges you see with firms and kind of making the shift?
Sure. Yeah. I think some of the obstacles really is just that leaders are unsure what their alternatives are. If I'm not charging hourly, and let's talk about that just for a second. So hourly is there's no relationship whatsoever between the time you spend on something and what that something is worth as an outcome or to lead to the outcome or the result. There's no relationship. Those things are 100% distinct from each other. They're both important. So how much time you spend is part of the is it worth it to me to do the work proposition. The other side of it is the investment side, the ROI. Is it worth it to you to buy that from me? Those are separate things and we convolute them all the time. We need bifurcation. We had a chat
Yeah.
about the word bifurcation.
Love it.
So most firms, when they're sitting there thinking about, okay, yeah, I do want to get out of this hours thing. How do I do that? What is available to me? The term value pricing has been out there for a long time. I personally not a fan of the word value price because it's deeply misunderstood. But in a nutshell, a value-based price has to be arrived at in conjunction with the client. You have to be communicating with the client and arrive at the value that the client sees it. It's like beauty, it's in the eye of the beholder. I cannot unilaterally decide what price is a value price for you to pay me. It has to be working together to come to that. Um, and so I just say a worth-based price and I say worth it to me to do it, worth it to you to buy it. And let's arrive at a worth-based price. I feel like the word value has baggage. One is firms say they do it when they don't. And two is value has been associated with the word cheap. It just, it's gimmicky and cheap, like at Walmart, it's great value, and all of that. So we want to get away from that. So a value-based price is a direction you would want to go, or let's say worth-based price is a direction you'd want to go for a better experience. And the alternatives, a way to get there is to play the bridge the gap between today and then how we price today, or we don't price, how we bill today, and how we could price proactively in the future is to explore fixed prices, which are great. A fixed price is certainty. It's a good client experience. It's fine. That's unilateral. I tell you it's going to be $5,000 and now you know. But to play with options. And so using fixed prices with 3 options is a really good way to learn to develop that skill, because what I do is I say, Sarah, it could be $3,000 to $5,000 for your tax work or whatever. Let's talk about what you need. At the $3,000 level, we're looking at this. At the $5,000 level, we're looking at that. What makes sense to you? What's important to you? And by having these conversations with each and every client, it just takes 5 or 10 of those, and you're developing the skill set for how to have worth-based price conversations. So once they see that that's out there, that I think that they realize the alternative is a skill set to be learned. There's fear and resistance to change, but I don't think that's been the biggest barrier. I think sometimes people want to see that others are doing it successfully and then they'll lean in. But by and large, it's this, and you know this, Sarah, if you want to change people's behavior, they have to change their beliefs. So we have to coach and counsel them and show them how this is hearts and minds work. And let me tell you the key. The key when you're talking about worth-based pricing is to help the professional, the practitioner, see the difference they're making for that company they're helping, or the difference they're making for the life of that family, that, you know, in the family office situation, or the business owner starting a CAS practice. When they see that they're making a difference and they don't look at their work as a number of hours or a list of tasks, but they look at it as an outcome, like a CAS client will tell you, I need to outsource my accounting because I want my life back. I spend every night, you and I know this because we run our own businesses. I spend nights and weekends doing my own accounting. I want my life back. So let me outsource that to you. Giving
Yeah.
somebody their life back is powerful. And we're in a position right now where morale is rock bottom in a lot of CPA firms. So when you can help them see how to have passion for their work again, it works. So changing beliefs to change behavior goes back to showing people how it can elevate and lift their passion for their work, and put them, their daily discussions about price and worth, in correlating that to what they're passionate about, which is helping people.
Oh, Michelle, I love it. And I don't think you could have said that any better. We have strong beliefs about those behaviors and those mindsets, and we call it the growth mindset here. But I couldn't agree any more with you. We unfortunately are out of time. We had a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge here with our audience. And we look forward to having you on a future call.
My pleasure. Back with you soon, Sarah. Take care.